My name is Verna, and I'm 52 years old. As I stood in my kitchen that evening, stirring the pasta sauce and setting the table for three, everything seemed perfectly normal in our cozy family home. David and Jessica would be home soon, and we'd share another quiet dinner together. But there was something different in the air lately, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. Little things that made me wonder if the warmth I felt from my son and daughter-in-law was as genuine as it appeared. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask, where are you watching from tonight? Please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because this story will absolutely shock you about what family loyalty can really hide behind closed doors. Trust me, you'll want to stay until the very end to see how sometimes the most unexpected betrayal can lead to the most empowering victory. Now, let me take you back to how this all began. To understand what happened, you need to know about the life I'd built in this house. 3 years ago, I lost my husband Robert to cancer. We'd been married 25 years, and together, we'd turned this 1920s Victorian into something truly special. Located in one of Portland's most desirable neighborhoods, our 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom home sat on nearly half an acre, complete with Robert's beloved workshop and my prized rose garden. When the realtor estimated its current value at $1.2 million, I nearly choked on my morning coffee. David, our only child, had always been such a devoted son. At 29, he worked as a claims adjuster for a major insurance company and had seemed to inherit his father's steady, reliable nature. When Robert was dying, David spent every weekend helping with yard work and home repairs. He'd hold my hand during the worst moments and promise that everything would be okay. Those memories made what came later hurt so much more. 2 years after Robert's passing, David married Jessica, a 26-year-old beautician from the salon downtown. She had striking auburn hair and a laugh that filled rooms. During their courtship, she'd bring me little gifts and insist I call her Mom. She seemed genuinely interested in family stories and would spend hours looking through photo albums with me. I thought I'd gained not just a daughter-in-law, but a true daughter. 8 months ago, they approached me with what seemed like a reasonable request. David explained that Jessica's student loans and their credit card debt were mounting. They were struggling to make rent on their apartment while trying to save for a house of their own. Would it be possible, just temporarily, for them to move in with me? They could help with household expenses and maintenance, and I'd have company in this big house that felt so empty without Robert. The arrangement started beautifully. Jessica would have coffee ready when I came downstairs each morning. David would mow the lawn on Saturdays, just like his father used to do. We'd cook dinner together, watch movies in the evenings, and I felt like I had a real family again. For the first time since Robert's death, the house felt alive with conversation and laughter. I went to bed each night, grateful that my son had found such a wonderful partner and that they both cared enough to keep me close. My daily routine became a source of genuine joy. I'd wake at 6:30, tend to my roses, while the morning air was still cool. Then, prepare breakfast for everyone. David would leave for work by 8:15. Jessica usually didn't start at the salon until 10, so we'd often spend those quiet morning hours talking about everything from recipes to her plans for redecorating their future home. I looked forward to these conversations. After years of solitude, having another woman in the house felt like a blessing I hadn't expected. But as autumn turned to winter, I began noticing small changes that left me feeling unsettled, though I couldn't explain why. The first sign something was shifting came on a Tuesday morning in November. I'd been asking David for weeks to fix the leaky faucet in the guest bathroom, the same bathroom he and Jessica used every day. Previously, he would have handled it the same weekend I mentioned it. But when I brought it up again over breakfast, he barely looked up from his phone. "Mom, just call a plumber. I've got too much going on at work right now." His tone wasn't harsh, but it was dismissive in a way I'd never heard from him before. Jessica didn't even glance up from her coffee. In the past, she would have jumped in to either offer help or at least acknowledge the conversation. The following week, Jessica began rearranging furniture throughout the house. I came home from grocery shopping to find she'd moved Robert's favorite reading chair from the living room to the basement and replaced it with a sleek, modern armchair I'd never seen before. When I asked about it, she smiled brightly and said, "Oh, I hope you don't mind. I just thought the room needed a fresher look. That old chair was so worn and outdated." That chair held 25 years of memories. Robert had read his evening newspaper there every single day. But Jessica's enthusiasm made me feel like I was being unreasonable for caring about an old piece of furniture. I nodded and said it looked nice, even though seeing that empty spot where Robert's chair used to sit made my chest tighten with grief I thought I'd processed. More concerning was an overheard phone conversation that stopped me in my tracks. I'd come home early from my book club meeting because I'd forgotten my reading glasses. As I approached the front door, I could hear David's voice through the screen, animated in a way I rarely heard anymore when he spoke to me. No, we're definitely thinking long-term here," he was saying. "Jessica's already got ideas about updating the kitchen, maybe converting the workshop into something more useful. When Mom gets older, she'll probably want something smaller anyway, more manageable." I stood, frozen on my own front porch, key in hand. They were talking about renovating my house, the workshop where Robert had spent countless hours building furniture and fixing neighborhood kids' bicycles. They were making plans for when I got older, as if my future living situation was already decided. I finally entered the house, and David quickly ended his call, greeting me with the same casual smile he'd been wearing for months. But the moment that truly shook my foundation came during Thanksgiving week. I'd spent 2 days preparing Robert's family recipes. His mother's stuffing, the sweet potato casserole that took hours to make properly, the apple pie that required rolling dough from scratch. David and Jessica ate enthusiastically and thanked me repeatedly. But after dinner, as I was washing dishes, I heard Jessica on the phone with what I assumed was her sister. "Girl, you should see this place. It's like living in a magazine. 3 floors, original hardwood, that kitchen island I showed you in the pictures. And the neighborhood houses here never go on the market. When they do, they're gone in days." She paused, presumably listening. "Oh, we're playing the long game. Being super helpful and sweet. David thinks his mom will probably want to downsize eventually anyway." The plate I was holding slipped from my soapy hands and shattered against the kitchen floor. Both David and Jessica rushed in to help clean up, expressing concern for my safety, asking if I was okay. Their faces showed nothing but care and worry, yet her words echoed in my mind long after they'd gone to bed that night. Playing the long game, being super helpful and sweet. I began paying closer attention to patterns I'd previously overlooked. How they'd started referring to different rooms as ours instead of yours or Mom's. How Jessica would photograph different corners of the house, claiming she wanted to show her friends our beautiful family home. How David had begun researching property values in our neighborhood, leaving browser windows open on the computer we all shared. The mounting evidence created a sick feeling in my stomach, but I kept trying to rationalize their behavior. These were normal things for young people to think about. Of course, they'd want to understand the area they were living in. Of course, Jessica would want to share pictures of our lovely home with her friends. Of course, David would be curious about real estate values. He worked in insurance, after all. But sleep became elusive, and I found myself lying awake, wondering if Martha, my neighbor of 15 years, had been trying to tell me something important when she'd mentioned over the fence that those young folks seem awfully comfortable making themselves at home. The conversation that shattered my world happened on a Friday night in early December. David and Jessica had gone out for dinner and drinks with friends from Jessica's salon, something that had become a weekly tradition. They'd invited me to join them once or twice, but the loud music and late hours weren't really my style. And besides, I genuinely enjoyed having quiet evenings to myself with a book and a cup of tea. That particular night, they returned around 11:30, and I could hear their voices carrying up from the living room below my bedroom. They weren't trying to be quiet. They'd had quite a bit to drink, and their laughter echoed through the house. Initially, I was happy to hear them having fun. Young couples should enjoy themselves, and they'd been working so hard lately. But then their conversation took a turn that made my blood run cold. "Your mom is so naive about money." Jessica's voice drifted up clearly. "She has no idea what this house is actually worth." I looked up comparable sales in this neighborhood. Some of these places go for 1 or 1.5 million. "I know," David replied, and I could hear the clink of glasses as they continued drinking. "She still thinks like it's 1990-something. But yeah, we're just using her for now. Let her think we're here because we want family time and can't afford our own place. When she's older and needs more care or, eventually, we'll inherit this place anyway." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat up in bed, straining to hear more, hoping I'd misunderstood. $1.2 million. Jessica continued, her voice dreamy with possibility. "We could sell this place and buy something amazing in California, or even just take the money and travel for a year. Your mom is so trusting, she'd probably sign the house over to us if we played it right." "Exactly." David laughed. Actually laughed at the thought of deceiving his own mother. "She depends on us now. Where would she go without this house? She'll do whatever we suggest because she thinks we love her and want to take care of her." I pressed my hand to my mouth to keep from crying out. This was my son, the baby I'd nursed through pneumonia. At 6 months old, the little boy who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, the teenager who'd written me Mother's Day cards, promising to always be there for me. This was the young man who'd held my hand at his father's funeral and sworn he'd never let anything bad happen to me. But there was more. "The best part," Jessica continued, "is that she's doing all of the cooking and cleaning while we save money for our real future. It's like having a live-in housekeeper who pays all the bills. And she's so grateful for our company," David added. "Sometimes I almost feel bad about how easy this is. She lights up every time we walk in the door like we're doing her some huge favor by living here." "Well, we are doing her a favor," Jessica said with cruel logic. "We're keeping her from being lonely. She should be thanking us. And when the time comes, we'll make sure she's taken care of in some nice senior facility. Everybody wins." "Everybody wins," David agreed, and they clinked glasses again in celebration of their deception. I sat in my darkened bedroom, trembling, with a combination of heartbreak and rage I'd never experienced before. Every kind gesture over the past 8 months had been calculated manipulation. Every family dinner, every movie night, every conversation about their plans and dreams, all of it had been performed for my benefit while they privately planned to eventually take everything Robert and I had built together. The next several hours passed in a fog of disbelief and planning. I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop my mind from racing through memories and seeing them in this new, horrible light. How Jessica had photographed every room for her friends. How David had been researching estate planning and inheritance law, claiming it was for work. How they'd both encouraged me to trust them with small financial decisions, testing how much control I'd willingly hand over. But somewhere, around 4 in the morning, as I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee and watching the sun begin to rise over my garden, the heartbreak began transforming into something else entirely. Robert's words came back to me from his final weeks. Verna, you're stronger than you know. Don't let anyone take advantage of your kind heart. This house, this life we built, protect it. I realized I had a choice. I could confront them directly and endure months of denials, manipulation, and possibly escalating deception. Or I could take action that would teach them exactly what happens when you underestimate someone you've chosen to betray. By the time David and Jessica stumbled downstairs around 10 that Saturday morning, both looking slightly hungover but cheerful, I had made my decision. The next phase of my plan required careful timing and complete secrecy. I spent the weekend acting completely normal, cooking their favorite meals and chatting about everyday topics, while internally calculating every detail of what needed to happen next. David and Jessica showed no signs of suspecting anything. In fact, they seemed more relaxed than ever, probably feeling confident that their conversation had gone unheard. On Monday morning, after David left for work and Jessica departed for the salon, I called Linda Thompson, a real estate agent who'd been a friend since our kids attended the same elementary school. Linda had helped several neighbors sell their homes over the years, and I knew she was both discreet and efficient. Verna, she said warmly when I reached her, how lovely to hear from you. What can I do for you today? Linda, I need to ask you something in complete confidence. If someone wanted to sell a house very quickly, within 24 to 48 hours, would that be possible? There was a pause. Well, it depends on several factors. Price, condition, location. In this market, especially in your neighborhood, if someone priced it right for a cash sale, yes, it could potentially happen very fast. Verna, you're not thinking of selling your beautiful home, are you? I might be. Could we meet somewhere private to discuss this? Not at my house, and I'd prefer if this conversation stayed completely between us for now. We arranged to meet that afternoon at a coffee shop across town. Linda arrived with a folder full of recent comparable sales and her professional assessment pad. When I explained that I was considering an immediate sale and needed to understand my options, she didn't ask probing questions about my motivations. Instead, she focused on practical matters. Your house would likely appeal to investors or people relocating who need to close quickly, she explained. Given the location condition and current market, we could probably get $1,150,000 for a cash sale that closes within a week. Maybe $1,200,000 if you can wait 2 weeks. And if I wanted to close this weekend, $1,100,000 definitely possible. I actually have 3 cash buyers who've been looking for exactly what you have. But Verna, this seems sudden. Are you sure you want to move this quickly? I looked at Linda, this woman who'd cheered alongside me at countless school events, who'd brought casseroles after Robert's funeral, who'd never shown anything but genuine kindness to my family. Linda, if I told you that I'd discovered people I trusted were planning to take advantage of me and that I needed to act before they could do more damage, would you help me? Her expression shifted to one of concern and determination. Absolutely. What do you need me to do? That afternoon, we drew up preliminary paperwork. Linda contacted her most reliable cash buyer, an investor who specialized in renovating historic homes and had been searching for a property exactly like mine for over 6 months. By evening, we had a verbal agreement pending inspection and final paperwork. Tuesday and Wednesday, I continued my normal routine while Linda arranged inspections and coordinated with the buyer's agent. The inspector came during hours when David and Jessica were both at work. The financial verification and title work proceeded smoothly since I owned the house outright. One of Robert's wisest decisions had been paying off our mortgage early. By Thursday evening, everything was in place. The closing could happen Friday afternoon, with ownership transferring immediately upon completion. Linda had arranged for all documents to be signed electronically to speed the process, and the buyer's funds were already in escrow. Meanwhile, David and Jessica continued their charade flawlessly. Thursday night, David even brought me flowers, just because, and Jessica cooked dinner, a gesture that would have touched me deeply a week earlier, but now felt like salt in an open wound. "You know, Mom," David said as we cleaned up after dinner. "Jessica and I were talking, and we really appreciate you letting us stay here while we get back on our feet. We don't want to overstay our welcome." "Oh, don't be silly," I replied, surprising myself with how normal my voice sounded. "Your family. This is your home too." "You're so sweet," Jessica added, hugging me from behind as I loaded the dishwasher. "We're so lucky to have you." If only they knew that their luck was about to run out. Friday morning arrived bright and clear. David left for work at his usual time. Jessica had a full day of appointments at the salon, and I had the house to myself to complete the final steps of my plan. At 2 o'clock, I met Linda and the buyers at the title company. At 3:15, I signed the final documents. At 3:45, ownership of my house of 25 years officially transferred to someone else. I returned home and spent the afternoon packing my personal belongings. Photo albums, Robert's watch, my grandmother's china, the few pieces of jewelry that held sentimental value. Everything else would stay with the house. I'd already arranged a furnished apartment across town, a cozy place where I could start over without the weight of memories or manipulation. David and Jessica would be home by 6:30. I had everything ready for the conversation that would change all of our lives forever. That Friday evening unfolded exactly as I'd planned. David arrived home first around 6:15, calling out his usual, "Hey Mom, I'm home," as he walked through the front door. I was sitting in the living room with a cup of coffee, wearing my favorite blue sweater and the pearl necklace Robert had given me for our 20th anniversary. I wanted to look composed and dignified for what was about to happen. "How was work, honey?" I asked, as if this were any other ordinary evening. "Oh, same old insurance claims and paperwork," he replied, kissing my cheek before heading upstairs to change clothes. "What's for dinner? Something smells amazing." "I made your favorite pot roast," I called after him. "Jessica should be home soon, and then we can eat." For a few minutes, everything felt heartbreakingly normal. David came back downstairs, in jeans and a college sweatshirt, the same outfit he'd worn for lazy Friday nights since he was 19. He flopped onto the couch next to me and started scrolling through his phone, occasionally showing me funny memes or work stories, just like we'd done hundreds of times before. Jessica arrived at 6:30, on the dot, her hair styled from the salon, and her arms full of shopping bags from an apparent post-work retail therapy session. "Hello, beautiful people," she announced cheerfully. "You would not believe the day I had." Mrs. Henderson came in wanting to go platinum blonde, and her hair was already damaged from a home color job. It took 4 hours to fix. She kissed David hello and gave me a warm hug, asking about my day and complimenting the dinner smell wafting from the kitchen. For a moment, looking at the two of them, laughing together on my couch, I almost wavered. They seemed so genuinely happy, so much like the loving family I'd believed we were building together. But then I remembered Tuesday night's conversation about using me and waiting for me to die, and my resolve hardened. "Before we eat," I said, setting down my coffee cup, "I have something important to tell you both." David looked up from his phone. "Sure, Mom. What's up?" I sold the house. The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica's laugh died mid-giggle. David's phone slipped from his hands onto the coffee table with a small thud. "What did you say?" Jessica asked, her voice suddenly sharp. "I sold the house. The closing happened this afternoon. The new owners will take possession on Sunday." David stood up so quickly, he nearly knocked over his coffee. "Mom, that's not funny. You can't just sell a house without telling the people living in it." "Actually, I can. It was my house. I owned it outright, and I did sell it." Jessica's face had gone completely pale. "Verna, you're scaring us. Please tell me this is some kind of joke." I reached into the folder beside my chair and pulled out the closing documents, still warm from the printer at the title company. "Here are the papers. Everything's finalized and legal." David grabbed the papers, his hands shaking as he scanned the official documents. This can't be real. Why would you do this? Where are we supposed to live? Where are you supposed to live?" "That's an interesting question, David. Where am I supposed to live?" I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden Robert and I had planted together. "I've been wondering about that myself, especially since I overheard your conversation last Friday night." The color drained from David's face. Jessica made a small sound, like a wounded animal. "I heard you talking about how naive I am about money, about how you're just using me, about how you're playing the long game until I'm older or dead, and then you'll inherit this place anyway." My voice remained calm and steady, though my heart was pounding. "I heard you laughing about how trusting I am, how easy it is to manipulate me." "Mom, you misunderstood," David started, but I held up my hand. "I heard Jessica say I should be thanking you for keeping me from being lonely. I heard you both celebrate how you're living here rent-free while planning my future in a senior facility. I heard you toast to how everybody wins, except apparently me." Jessica began crying. "Verna, please. We were drunk. We didn't mean any of that. We love you. This is our family." "No, Jessica. This was my family, my home, my life that you were planning to take piece by piece." I turned back to face them both. "But here's what you didn't count on. I'm not as helpless or naive as you thought, and I don't appreciate being used." David was still staring at the papers in disbelief. "Mom, even if we said stupid things, you can't just sell the house. This is insane. Where will we go?" "I'm sure you'll figure something out. You're both young, healthy, and employed. I'm confident you'll land on your feet." "But where will you go?" Jessica demanded, anger beginning to replace her tears. "You're 52 years old. You can't just uproot your entire life because you misheard a private conversation." "I didn't mishear anything, and I've already arranged a lovely one-bedroom apartment across town. I move in tomorrow." I picked up my coffee cup with hands that were surprisingly steady. "You have until Sunday morning to find somewhere else to live. The new owners are taking possession at noon." The next hour was a blur of accusations, pleading, and frantic phone calls. David called his friends, looking for temporary housing. Jessica called her sister, sobbing about being homeless. They both tried various approaches to convince me to reverse the sale, Promises to change, threats about family, loyalty, even attempts to suggest I was having some kind of breakdown. But I remained unmoved. Every time they tried to manipulate me with guilt or fear, I remembered their cruel laughter about using me and waiting for me to die. Every time they claimed to love me, I thought about Jessica, describing me as a live-in housekeeper who pays the bills. By midnight, they had secured a small apartment across town, the same complex where they'd lived before moving in with me, ironically enough. The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. No more free housing, no more built-in meal service, no more easy access to the valuable property they'd planned to eventually inherit. As I went to bed that night in my own house, for the last time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete peace of mind. The weekend that followed was a whirlwind of activity and raw emotion. Saturday morning, David and Jessica moved through the house like zombies, packing their belongings with the mechanical efficiency of people in shock. I helped them load boxes into their cars, maintaining the same polite distance I'd use with any temporary house guests. "Mom, please." David tried one last time as he loaded his television into his trunk. "Can we just talk about this? Really talk. Maybe we can work something out with the new owners. Explain that there was a misunderstanding." "There was no misunderstanding, David. I heard exactly what you both meant to say." I handed him a box of Jessica's salon equipment. "The new owners are expecting an empty house tomorrow. This conversation is finished." Jessica emerged from the house, carrying her clothes, her face streaked with tears and makeup. "Verna, I want you to know that we really did care about you. Maybe we said some awful things, but underneath it all, we were grateful for everything you did for us." "Were you grateful when you moved my husband's chair to the basement without asking? Were you grateful when you photographed my house to research its value? Were you grateful when you planned to put me in a nursing home so you could sell my life's work?" Each question hit like a measured blow. Your gratitude is worth exactly what I received for it. Nothing honest. By Sunday afternoon, they were gone. The house felt enormous and eerily quiet, without their voices, their belongings, their constant presence that had filled the spaces Robert left behind. For a moment, standing in my empty living room, I questioned whether I'd done the right thing. This house held every important memory of my adult life. Robert's workshop still smelled like sawdust and paint. The kitchen still echoed with 25 years of family conversations. But then I walked through each room one final time and realized something profound. The house felt clean now, free of deception and manipulation, free of people who saw my kindness as weakness and my love as an opportunity to exploit. At 2:00, I met Linda and the new owners for the final walkthrough. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson were a retired couple from Seattle, looking for a project they could restore with love and attention. When Mrs. Patterson ran her hand along the original banister and commented on how beautifully maintained everything was, I felt genuinely happy that the house would continue to be cherished. "You clearly love this place," Mr. Patterson said as we concluded the tour. "It shows in every detail." "I did love it," I replied, "and I know you will too." Moving into my new apartment that evening felt like shedding an old skin. The one-bedroom space was modern and bright, with large windows facing west toward the mountains. I hung Robert's picture on the living room wall and arranged my grandmother's china in the kitchen cabinet. By the time I made my first cup of coffee Monday morning, the apartment already felt like home. Over the following days, David attempted to contact me repeatedly. He left voicemails ranging from apologetic to angry to desperate. Jessica sent long text messages explaining how they'd been joking around and never meant any of their hurtful words seriously. But I didn't respond to any of their attempts at communication. They had revealed their true feelings about me, and no amount of backpedaling could erase that knowledge. 3 weeks after the sale, Martha, my former neighbor, called to tell me that David had been driving by the old house regularly, sometimes sitting in his car across the street for hours. The new owners had mentioned seeing him, to her wondering if they should be concerned about suspicious activity. "I told them he was your son," Martha said gently. "But Verna, I think you should know. He looks absolutely destroyed. Jessica left him last week. Apparently, she couldn't handle living in that tiny apartment after getting used to your beautiful house. That information should have brought me satisfaction, but instead, I felt a deep sadness for the family relationships that had been lost through greed and deception. David had chosen material gain over his mother's well-being, and Jessica had chosen comfortable living over authentic love. Their choices had consequences beyond what they'd anticipated. 6 months after selling the house, I was living a completely different life than I'd ever imagined possible. My Monday morning yoga class had introduced me to a group of women who became genuine friends, people who appreciated my company without any ulterior motives. Margaret, a 70-year-old retired teacher, became my closest confidant. She'd gone through her own family betrayal years earlier, when her adult children tried to convince her to sell her home and move closer to them, primarily so they could manage her finances. "The hardest lesson I learned," she told me over coffee one morning, "is that being family doesn't automatically make someone trustworthy. Sometimes the people who should protect you are exactly the people you need protection from." My Wednesday watercolor classes provided a creative outlet I'd never explored before. There's something deeply satisfying about watching colors blend and flow across paper, creating something beautiful from nothing but pigment and water. My instructor, James, encouraged me to paint landscapes from memory, and I found myself recreating scenes from the rose garden Robert and I had tended for so many years. But instead of feeling sad about what I'd lost, these paintings reminded me of what I'd gained, the strength to choose my own path forward. Thursday evenings, I volunteered at the local community center, helping serve dinner to homeless families. This work connected me to people facing real hardship through no fault of their own, and it put my own situation into perspective. I had chosen to leave my house and start over. These families had lost their homes due to job losses, medical bills, or other circumstances beyond their control. My problems were luxurious compared to theirs. The financial aspects of my new life turned out far better than expected. After paying cash for my apartment lease 6 months in advance and purchasing new furniture, I still had over $800,000 in investments, generating monthly income. Combined with Robert's life insurance and my part-time work at the community center, I was more financially secure than I'd been in years. The house, for all its sentimental value, had been expensive to maintain and heat. My apartment utilities cost less than $200 monthly. In July, David finally stopped driving by the old house and called me directly instead of leaving voicemails. When I answered the phone, his voice sounded older, more mature than I remembered. "Mom, I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I need to tell you something. Jessica and I are divorced. She left when she realized we weren't going to inherit your house after all. She said I was an idiot for blowing our future by being honest about our plans." I listened without responding. "I've been going to counseling," he continued, trying to understand how I became the kind of person who could use his own mother that way. Dr. Williams says I got caught up in Jessica's ambitions and lost sight of what really mattered. But that's not an excuse. I hurt you in ways I can't take back. No, you can't take it back, I agreed quietly. I miss you, Mom. I miss talking to you and having dinner together and just being your son instead of someone trying to get something from you. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I needed you to know that I understand what I lost. The conversation lasted 20 minutes. David told me about his therapy sessions, his new apartment closer to downtown, his promotion at work that he'd achieved by focusing on his career instead of scheming about inheritance. He didn't ask for money, didn't request visits, didn't try to manipulate me into reconciliation. He simply acknowledged the damage he'd caused